You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. We are looking at the situation between Israel and Iran, and what's a better way than having our panel of experts to decipher and to guide us, give us some inside information what's going on. Malcolm Hoenlein of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations joins us, as does Uri Kaufman, who's the author of American Intifada, Israel, the Gaza War, the New Anti-Semitism. He's an expert in Iran and will be joined shortly by Ellie Cohanim, former diplomat and former refugee from Iran. Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Malcolm, thank you. Sharut, tell us, what's the latest?
Well, it's ongoing right now. There have been a series of very serious hits against Israel by the Iranians. There are casualties, unfortunately, many wounded. There is a building in Bat Yam that is on the verge of collapse, and they believe 30 people are still inside. As I said, there were a number of fatalities. Magen David Adom, Hatzalah, everybody is working to rescue the people in various locations that were hit. There were firings at Haifa. There was a drone shot down in Eilat, thank God, that was intercepted by the Air Force. But it's expected that there could be as many hundreds, even more, fired tonight. That's what the Iranians are threatening. Israel has taken down the vast majority, and some have fallen in open areas, but unfortunately others hit buildings at Weizmann Institute, hit in various locations in Tel Aviv, and a family in Tamra, an Israeli Arab community. 4 women, a mother and daughters, were killed by a rocket that landed there. So the situation has escalated. Israel today hit a variety of places, including oil pipeline, including the storage places for uranium and an oil storage facility that with 11 containers that had, I don't know, a couple 100 million liters of oil, and that provided 7 million liters a day just to Tehran, and that was taken off line. So many places are being hit. Isfahan, as I said, a key uranium conversion plant where you had much of the 20 to 60% purity of the uranium enrichment was attacked. The underground facilities still remain intact for the large part, but the above ground facilities have been hit, and many other locations. Leaders of the nuclear program, I don't want to call them scientists because they are really people who are participating in murderous plans, but they are the heads of the nuclear program, as well as the leaders of the armed forces, where many have been removed.
Is there any plan, or why doesn't Israel just shut off electricity in the country?
Well, they have shut off electricity to parts of it. There isn't one switch, that just shuts off.
That electromagnetic? There's technology where you can just shut down the whole country.
If Israel had the ability to just shut down the country, they would have done it. They have done really incredible things. You remember, Iran is 10 times the size of Israel. It's a big country, and the weapons are all over the country. The launch places. It's believed that they have thousands of missiles. Israel did a remarkable job the first day in taking out facilities, and remember, basically they're doing it themselves. There are THAAD missile deployments in Israel, 2 of them manned by American troops. A lot of discussion going on today about U.S. involvement, and right now it seems the administration is leaning towards not direct involvement. There are people like Colby Eldridge at the Defense Department, who leads a group that has been arguing against anything that redeploys from Asia, which they think is the most important thing, but also have long sought not to limit American involvement. And there are others in the administration, the neo-isolationists they're called other things, who have similarly favored that position. So right now, Israel is handling this situation. If you notice, the other countries around Israel have not gotten in. It's the radical change. Think if this had been going on with Hezbollah and Hamas in power, Zeb, you would have had a completely different story. with, or if Syria, which was Iran's main ally, had Assad hadn't been removed and their army and air force depleted, and today Israel flies over Syria. The Iraqis essentially seem to be neutralized. It's a dramatic change from the Seventh Front War that Iran was going to have. And now Iran finds itself having to face this challenge. They can do a lot of damage. We should not minimize it. People have to know how serious the situation is and what Israel faces. But if Israel hadn't done this, think if Iran would have been able to move ahead with even one bomb that they would have dropped, God forbid, on Tel Aviv or something. More importantly, continuing to develop, and you see by what they've mounted, what their true intention is, that when they say death to Israel and death to the United States,
They mean it.
And this is time for people to understand this is a battle for America, for Western values, for democracy, for freedom. And the fact that you have Western leaders and others joining the chorus to say Israel should stop, that we want peace, we want to stop, even though I think it's more moderate than it might have been. And thank God the United States has stood with Israel in the UN and other places. But still, this should be something the West celebrates and should be lining up to support Israel, because they're doing the dirty work. They're paying the price for the failure of the West to stand up to this dictatorship, which is aligned with Russia and China, but working in Africa, working in South America, undermining democracy, undermining freedom, posing threats to America in so many ways. And yet, and we know that they were involved in some of the financing and some of the scandals about the rise of anti-Semitism. This is a dangerous regime. And what Israel is doing now is, maybe people will say it's overdue, but you see how complex it is. And when people come up with simplistic solutions, I know they hit you with it also sometimes in the question saying, why doesn't Israel just do this? You know, you sit there in the Kiryat, which, by the way, got hit, the Israel's Pentagon, and know all that they know and what the complication in making these kind of decisions are.
It's hard. And in 1981, when Israel hit Iraq's nuclear reactor, the whole world condemned Israel, I believe, including the United States, and it proved to be saving the world. And I think this will be the same way. But unfortunately, it may take some of these countries a while before they appreciate and understand what Israel has done. Let me turn to Uri. I know you're an expert on Iran. Israel seems to have some wonderful intelligence on ground. In fact, whatever the debacle was of October 7th with the failure of intelligence, I think it's made up for it in what happened in Iran. Are the people there going to, and this is what Israel has been saying, that they hope there'll be a change of regime. Do we know that there's any movement among the people in the country to say, hey, we have enough of the Ayatollahs and this warmongering regime?
So far, the war is going shockingly well, far, far better than anyone ever hoped or expected. When it's coming out on, I've been monitoring Israeli media. When the cabinet approved the operation, the estimates were a low of 800 Israelis killed by Iranian missiles and a high of 4,000. So far, at least, it's only been 9. Israel took out Iran's manufacturing capability of missiles back last October. So they can't make more missiles for now. It's thought that they have about 2,000 or so. They fired off a little more than 200. The Israelis have knocked almost all of them out of the sky. So far, at least, thank God, it's going really well. Also, when analysts were gaming this out, they talked about taking out the nuclear facilities, especially the big 3, which are Isfahan, Fordow, and Natanz is the other one. There's some other minor ones. No one envisioned them just wiping out the entire senior leadership of the country except for the supreme leader. So even there, it's just shocking, the degree also of intelligence, because they're showing pictures out of Iran of literally just not a building, not even a floor, but just a room in a building. So they know literally exactly where these officials are sitting. They can get a missile from, I guess you could say 1,000 miles away. That's where Israel is. Obviously, it's coming from usually a plane, which is closer, but from 1,000 miles away to fire a missile into a window into a specific room it's really just a shockingly effective intelligence capability and also missile capability. Now, as far as the goals of the campaign, you mentioned the Iranian people rising up. So on the one hand, the Israelis are being very cautious about that. They've said there are only 2 goals to this operation. One is to take out Iran's missiles. The other is to take out Iran's nuclear capability. Changing the regime is not on the table. Changing a regime is really, really hard to do. Now, it's one of those things where it looks impossible before it happens. It looks inevitable after it happens. No one thought last November Bashar would be gone. A month later, he was gone. You never know with these things. But certainly no one, think of all the things that had to happen in Syria for Bashar to be taken down, a 13-year civil war, the country demolished, Hezbollah taken off the board. Only then is it possible. So, we're probably really, really far away from the Ayatollahs being taken down. But one good fact, when Israel defeated Egypt in 1967, the Egyptian people spilled out into the streets. I mean, literally millions of people to show their support for President Nasser. We're not seeing that in Iran this time. And a lot of people have noticed this. The Iranian people are not running out into the streets chanting death to Israel. It does suggest that there does seem to be some sort of exhaustion in Iran with the regime. And, who knows? Maybe this will be what takes them down. I'll just make one final point. You asked, why doesn't Israel just turn off all the lights? They did attack one civilian target, but not in a very severe way. There's a big natural gas facility in Iran. It's actually the biggest natural gas field in the world. The Israelis did hit it. They hit the tanks to create this spectacular fire. They obviously did it because they knew that people would take pictures. It would be posted on social media. It would have a good psychological effect. But they have not hit any of the big civilian infrastructure. There's a huge refinery in Abadan. There's a huge bit of oil infrastructure in a place called Kharg Island. That's where Iran exports all its oil. There are a lot of oil fields. They have not hit that. They haven't hit the power plants yet either. And they've done that deliberately because they've effectively said to the Iranians, look, we won't hit your civilian infrastructure if you don't hit ours. Now, so far, the Iranians are aiming at civilian targets. They hit Ramat Gan. They hit East Jerusalem. There was a big explosion in Rehovot. It was on social media. So Defense Minister Katz has said if they keep doing it, Israel will take it up a notch. But at least for the moment, the Israelis have kept this off the table to be able to at least hold that out as a threat. If you don't attack us, we won't attack you. But it does look like it's going to escalate.
But how desperate are they? Because they're losing the war. How desperate and how far are they going to go? Do we have any idea?
We don't. It's completely opaque. It's a decision that's going to be made by one man and one man only, and that's the supreme leader. And the Israelis deliberately left him alive, probably because they don't want the taboo of taking out the head of state of another country. They've never done it. But we don't really know. It's completely unpredictable. The one thing that's been the most predictable about this whole conflict and this whole crisis is just how unpredictable it's been. If you remember last year in 2024 in April, when Iran fired off this enormous missile barrage at Israel, it was actually the largest missile barrage in world history up to that point against any country. They fired 30 cruise missiles, 100 ballistic missiles, hundreds of drones. The Israelis shot almost all of it out of the sky. But the fact of the matter is, no one saw that coming. It happened because Israel took out an Iranian general in Damascus. No one gamed out that the Iranians would go crazy and fire all those missiles, but they did. Again, it just speaks to, I could even say that about October 7 itself. No one thought that the Hamas would ever do what they did. That's why they were caught by surprise. Because no one ever gamed out that Hamas would do something so crazy. So again, the whole thing is just by its nature unpredictable.
We're looking with a panel of experts as to what's happening in the Israel-Iran conflict. You just heard Uri Kaufman. He's an expert on Iran, author of American Intifada, Israel, the Gaza War, and New Anti-Semitism, Malcolm Hoenlein of the Conference of President Major American Jewish Organizations. And when we come back, we'll be joined by Ellie Cohanim, a former American diplomat, broadcast journalist, who is a refugee from Iran. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned. And we'll try to get to some of your phone calls, 212-769-1925, 212-769-1925. Email is a wonderful way to get your questions answered, Zev at TalklineNetwork.com. Coming up a little later on, we'll speak to Rabbi Adam Mintz, who's been converting gays and lesbians and transgenders and people who hate Israel to become Jews. He's now going to stop converting gays. We'll find out why that is. And also later on tonight, we'll speak to Dan Raviv, who's an expert on the Mossad. That will be live later on during the course of our show. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
Hi, Malcolm.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
And we're back, our panel of experts looking at what's happening with Iran and Israel. We've heard from Malcolm Hoenlein, the Conference for Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Uri Kaufman is an Iran expert, author of American Intifada, Israel, the Gaza War, the New Anti-Semitism. And we're joined right now by Ellie Cohanim, a former American diplomat, broadcast journalist, who served as Deputy Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism at the United States Department of Health during the first Donald Trump administration. Ellie, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Zev, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. I just saw you on Fox News. I know we appreciate you being here with us as well. From your perspective, what is going on in Iran? Are you in touch with the Iranian Jewish community? Are they in danger?
Zev, as you mentioned, I was born in Iran myself, and our family escaped in 1979 with the Islamic Revolution, and so blessed to come to the United States and be given refugee status. And, as I'm observing the events right now, what I wanted to share with you and your audience is that I think what we're seeing is the disintegration of a 46-year experiment of radical Islam hijacking a very proud, historic nation, an ancient civilization, the ancient Persians. And look, this regime, I believe, is a real anomaly. They were destined to hit the dustbin of history, like despotic regimes before them. I would really compare them to the Nazis, to communist Russia. This is the destiny that they are facing right now. I think today, as we see Israel in their second day of this historic campaign that they have waged against the Islamic Republic, we are really seeing a turning point in history where I'm convinced the Iranian people are going to be given the opportunity right now, as we speak, to take back our country.
Are we seeing support for the Iranian people against their regime? Because England and other countries are saying, Israel, stop. Israel always looks as being the aggressor, but I think the times that Israel has been most victorious has been like the Six-Day War when they took the initiative, the Iran nuclear reactor when they bombed it in 1981. They took the initiative, and now they're taking the initiative. They're going to be saving the world. I don't think the world appreciates it.
Zev, I think the international community has demonstrated to us since October 7th, for the most part, that, while at the very beginning of the October 7th massacre, there was an outpouring of support for Israel and Jews as victims. But the minute that Israel started to respond and took self-defensive measures against Hamas and the other Iranian proxies, that international support turned against Israel. So at this point, there's nothing the international community does in terms of their abject moral failure that surprises me. And I would, advise the Israelis not to really concern themselves with that. But I think going back to what's happening on the ground in Iran, look, the Israelis pulled off so far. Again, we're only in the first, 48 hours of this campaign, but what they have accomplished in this 48 hours is going to go down in military history, is going to be studied by defense experts for the ages. This combination of hitting nuclear sites, hitting military sites, taking out the command and control, the Mossad's intelligence penetration deep into Iran, all of this at the same time, the drone base that they set up inside the country. You could just go on and on about just the military stunning success of what the Israelis have pulled off, this small country against this huge, so-called powerful country. It's really stunning. Just today we found out that the Israelis have full dominance over the air of Iran. I was watching footage where the Israelis were knocking out Iranian personnel as they were about to load ballistic missiles or some sort of missiles, and they took out a launch pad, and it was something to behold, because the Israelis right now, the dominance they have over Iranian skies is similar to the way that they take out terrorists in Hamas, Hezbollah and Hamas terrorists. So we're talking like Gaza and Lebanon that borders Israel. The Israelis are doing that now over the skies of Iran. It is, again, I mean, the incredible military feat. And so I believe we're at a turning point, Zev, where Israel is rewriting the history of the Middle East, and they are changing the map. And this is exactly what has gone on since October 7th. They changed the map with eliminating, for the most part, Hamas in Gaza, with so much degrading Hezbollah in Lebanon, with the fall of Assad in Syria. And, I am convinced right now that the Iranian regime, the course of history has now changed due to this Israeli attack.
We hope so. Let me turn to Malcolm before we get to some of our phone calls. You mentioned before there's some isolationists. In fact, Tucker Carlson broke with the president the other day, and I don't know what happened to him. He used to be more friendly to Jews, and he's certainly transformed in something which is anti-Israel, anti-Jewish. But there's a whole group of isolationists that want America to stay out of any kind of conflict, including regarding Israel and even supporting Israel. How big of a movement is it, and how dangerous is it, and where does the vice president stand in all of this?
So I think this is not the time for us to look for the divisions. We have to look for how Israel and America can work together at this critical moment. And I think the president, who is the key decision makers, and in this case, really the key decision maker, has made clear where he stands and said that he has supported Israel. The question is the degree of involvement that they would get. We know that in terms of trying to take out missiles, supposedly there is cooperation. But this movement overall is very significant. There are many people that have been placed, particularly by some organizations, in various positions, in dozens and dozens of positions in the government. There have been people fired who were sympathetic. So I think, it's a question that we'll have to address and resolve at a later time. But overall, we have seen that the administration continued to supply the ammunition to Israel, that they continue to provide Israel with the wherewithal.
Does Israel have the bunker bombs to really go deep down and to destroy the facilities?
No, they don't have the bunker buster bombs, and you need really a B-52 or B-2 to do that. There are those planes stationed at Garcia in the Indian Ocean. We do have, as you know, one aircraft carrier. There have been a request by Kurylas, the head of CENTCOM, to bring a second one. We'll have to see, and that's what people should monitor, whether that happens. But look, I think, we have to look right now on what Israel needs and how we mobilize support, and people have to make their voices heard to members of Congress, to others, how important this is to America, fighting an evil force that says we are the great devil. Israel's the minor devil that has committed and building its facilities. They're building hypersonic missiles not to hit Israel, but to hit the United States. They don't need them to hit Israel, and you see they're not using them. What Israel did was to do this in layers, and that means they cut off the cyber capacity, that the military there was essentially blind, that the radars were offline. And I saw reports even this evening that about the radar systems were offline until this morning, and only one air defense base detecting strikes.
Israel plane to capture a woman pilot?
That is not confirmed. I know that there were reports of two pilots, of one pilot, one woman pilot. People should be very careful, about all the speculation. There's even a website that was created telling people, to give us your information, where you're located. We're going to help you, as if it was an Israeli website. And it turns out it is not. It's an enemy website looking to locate people, just as we saw in Canada, where even the Mounties are involved in this campaign to identify lone soldiers or people who fought in Israel, and publishing their name and investigating them for possible charges of war crimes. So people should be very careful what you post. Don't post pictures you don't need to. Don't post information that can be useful. We have a circumstance that is extremely serious. The widespread devastation in Israel, the hundreds of missiles that have hit. Israelis estimate there are hundreds more, and they're taking them out. They're doing amazing things to degrade Iranian capacity, and not just for now, but for the future as well. But they're fighting a country that has invested so many billions of dollars in this infrastructure that, I know what questions people ask us, and why don't they do this, and don't be armchair generals now. Right now, rally and support Israel. Make your voices heard to your elected officials. Make sure that we have all the backing. Get money to Israel. They're collecting blood. They're collecting other things. Maybe Magen David Adom could do it here to supply people. But there are a lot of things we can do. Not speculate, but people want to understand, and they should understand where places are being hit, so they can help. But right now, the politics and everything else aside, we have a situation. You asked about the domestic situation, and Ellie knows it well from coming from there and understands them better than we do. But Reza Pahlavi put out a very strong statement about supporting Israel essentially, and criticizing
the son of the Shah.
The son of the Shah, who's a symbolic leader, I would say right now, certainly of the monarchists and royalists. There are other statements that have been issued by Iranian dissident groups all over Europe, but it's interesting that nobody covers it here. Nobody reports it. If they had come out in support of the government, believe me, you would have heard it, but they do not. And there have been demonstrations against the government consistently. They do not get reported here. And again, about the special population in Iran, it's not a subject for public discourse, but right now we don't see any particular threat to them.
Well, thank God for that. Let's take one phone call before we break. Harriet in Brooklyn, your question for our guests. Go ahead, Harriet.
Thank you. I'm Yisrael Chai. I believe that Mondani is a domestic terrorist. He is a clear and present danger to the United States of America and to the state of Israel. The constitutional lawyers like
Madame, it's certainly an issue, but what's it related to with the Iran-Israeli conflict? Let's focus on that.
He's fomenting hatred against Israel and the Jewish people. And can he be classified as a domestic terrorist by the experts like Mark Levin, David Schoen? You must have a constitutional lawyer who can do something to block him from running.
Well, you can't block him from running, but we can do something, and this is certainly very important. I've been talking about it almost every night. We have to mobilize every single person, every single Jew, every single decent person who can vote must vote on June 24th. There's no question about that. Anyway, thank you for your phone call.
Yeah.
We pray. Let's squeeze one before break. Stan and Forest Hills, your question. Malcolm's expecting your phone call.
I want to reply to Mr. Hoenlein.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, now I want Israel to win this war, but if you're going to fight it half-assed, you're not going to win the war. The line that they're not going to hit people and just hit the place. You don't say that in a war. This is war all out, Mr. Hoenlein. It started. This is it.
There must be another
Iranians
Mr.
are not going to sit by.
You can call Malcolm. Stan,
No, he called me Mr.
I will call him Mr. Hoenlein. I respect you.
But Stan, I never said that. I don't know what you're talking about. I said that.
Well, you said we should not talk about it if you don't know what's going on.
No.
Listen,
Stan, you don't know what I was talking about.
Good.
Stan, I was referring to the Jewish community in Iran, not to the people and not to the nature of the war. You didn't understand. You have to listen more carefully. This is a very nuanced story. You know that.
Well, here's the point. I understand. I appreciate what you said. This
has to be an all-out war. It will be. Stan, you don't understand.
Yeah, there has to be. I mean, this half-assed thing about attacking.
Okay, 30 seconds. We have to break. So your question to Malcolm is?
My question is, unless they win the war outright, they're not going to do it. Are they going to go all out and take out the Iranian?
Okay, good. You wonder if they're going to go all out. Fine, Malcolm, you want to address that?
Yeah.
They're not only going all out, every resource is devoted to this. When hundreds of planes take off, you know that they're going all out. 200 planes. This is the biggest maneuver since the 67 war on the part of Israel. Every resource is being devoted to it, but they did it cleverly. They didn't show their hand beforehand, so they have to mobilize and they announced the recruitment of troops, but it wasn't until that day because then the Iranians would have advance notice. And all the deception, and we talked before about the attacks. They launched the attacks from inside Iran.
Amazing
they had
feat.
the drones there. They had all of these things that they launched at that time. So, Stan, you don't have to worry. Believe me, it's a total commitment.
Anyway, thank you for your phone call. Those are just tuning in. We have an expert panel on what's happening in Israel and Iran. You just heard Malcolm Hoenlein of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Ellie Cohanim is a former American diplomat, broadcast journalist. He's a refugee from Iran. And Uri Kaufman is an Iran expert. His book is called American Intifada, Israel, the Gaza War, and New Anti-Semitism. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. We'll try to squeeze in a couple more phone calls. 212-769-1925. You want to email us, zev@talklinenetwork.com. Coming up a little later on, Rabbi Adam Mintz. He's been converting gays and lesbians and transgenders and people who hate Israel to become Jews. He's now going to announce why he's no longer converting gay people to Judaism. Also later on, we'll speak to Dan Raviv. He's an expert on the Mossad. We'll get his take on what the Mossad has been doing. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
And we're back. We're looking at the Iran-Israel war that's taking place right now. Malcolm Hoenlein of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Uri Kaufman is an expert on Iran, author of American Intifada, Israel, the Gaza War, and the New Anti-Semitism. Ellie Cohanim, a former American diplomat, broadcast journalist, former refugee from Iran. Harriet from Gila from Brooklyn. You're on the air. Your question for comment for our guest.
Thank you, Rabbi Brenner. And thank you, Mr. Hoenlein, for being on. It's always fantastic to hear what you have to say. I would like to know your opinion about the following. We have problems from within. There is an Orthodox rabbi. I'm not criticizing him, but his action. And he is telling people, because of his dislike for Cuomo, he's telling people to support anyone else. Do you believe that this feeds into the Muslim candidate winning in the upcoming election by him saying, put your support for anyone else but Cuomo?
So I'm not an expert domestic in the city affairs, although as the honored chairman of the Flatbush Jewish Community Council Coalition, we did endorse Cuomo. We made it very clear why. This is in the Democratic primary. People will have a choice in the general election. Anybody who doesn't understand the threat, look at what Mamdani has said. If you want to commit suicide, it's your choice. But I think people should be very clear in understanding what the people stand for. It doesn't mean any other candidate is perfect. But this is the choice we have right now, and I hope people, most of all, will go out and vote, will mobilize others to vote. The polls keep shifting around, so it's very important that we make a clear statement.
And everybody has to vote, because too many people are complacent and say, what does my vote count? Your vote counts, and make sure you get your family and your friends to vote. June 24th is a pivotal day.
Excuse me for interrupting, there's also, it is imperative that people who are infirmed or cannot get out to the polls, that they get absentee ballots. There are a lot of Jewish people that are in nursing homes, etc., and rehabs that have the right to vote, and they must vote and express their voices.
After you don't want a mayor of New York City who supports Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah and all these terrorist groups. So the choice is clear, and we have to really get out mobile. Gila, thank you for your phone call. Let's go to an email question. I've read reports that Azerbaijan, which borders Iran, has helped Israel provide intelligence on Israel, which helped Israel's attack on Iran. Can any of your guests please comment?
I could speak to that.
Go ahead, Uri.
Israel has a very, very close relationship with Azerbaijan. Israel has helped Azerbaijan in its war against Armenia, and that is why it has done so well against Armenia. The two countries are very close. They've had a long relationship. There haven't been any reports that they've done anything so far in this war. It certainly wouldn't surprise me if they did. It would make a great base of operation that borders the country. But I just want to go back to one or two other points that were made before. First of all, almost all the governments of the world, certainly the Western world, are supporting Israel on this. Even the moderate Sunni regimes are issuing statements that are very powerful. It's pretty clear where their hearts and minds.
Are they supporting Israel like they did last time with some of the defenses?
This happened, but the one group that is organization, I'll say, that has condemned Israel the loudest is always the United Nations, and it's following a wonderful tradition of the UN. If you go back to the 1970s, Kurt Waldheim, the Secretary General of the UN Security Council at the time, condemned Israel for rescuing hostages in Entebbe. I don't know, maybe he thought they should give the hostages back to the terrorists. So at least it's nice to say that in the throes of an ever-changing world, some things never change. The UN is still the UN. Also, the one major American politician, I don't know where Mamdani came down on this, but Bernie Sanders condemned Israel for attacking Iran. It kind of makes you wonder.
Makes you wonder, and I'm sure Mamdani probably has the same sentiments, but he may not be expressing it because he's trying to get Jewish votes. And from what I saw, a poll, he has 14% of the Jewish vote. I find that hard to believe, but it's possible. It's possible in New York. Let me ask you, Ellie, I know you're connected with the Trump administration. What are you hearing from the administration about what positions and what's going on and how much support Israel can rely on from the United States?
Zev, I had the honor and privilege of a lifetime to serve under President Trump 45 as the Deputy Envoy to Combat Anti-Semitism. And what I witnessed with my own eyes and what I've seen since President Trump has come back into office is that there is absolutely no daylight between the president, the Jewish state of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu. You can see that play out right now as reports were coming in that actually President Trump and Netanyahu might have been coordinating in their messaging to surprise the Iranians, as Malcolm Hoenlein just mentioned. This attack on the Iranians was a complete surprise to them. And part of that was this posture between the US and Israel, where it would seem that the United States was holding Israel back, but in fact, there's been complete coordination behind the scenes. So look, I think Donald Trump, I was someone who helped present this, an award to him, a Defender of Zion award. It was between the two, his 2 terms in office. And the reason I called him our modern day Cyrus the Great, because there's no American president who has done more for Israel and for the Jewish people, for American Jews, than Donald Trump has. And so, my expectation is that is who he is. That is his gut. I think he understands the evil that the Iranian regime is now. Coming back into office, I think that the president, his administration, were hoping to be able to put out this world that was lit on fire under the Biden administration. You had 2 wars raging on 2 continents. This is the world he inherited. I think he was hoping to be able to bring wars to diplomatic resolution, to be able to then focus on his economic agenda, which is all about bringing prosperity for the American people. But I think that the reality of the Middle East is something that Donald Trump understands really well, probably more than any American president since Ronald Reagan.
He still wants to make a deal, right? Then he said, let's make a deal with Iran. They backed out of the negotiations, but he said, let's make a deal.
Zev, listen, what I have said about that from day one on this topic, I've said it over and over again on the airwaves, is that the president was giving the Iranian regime a real pathway through diplomacy to make a deal in earnest, and it was going to have to be a deal that Donald Trump would accept. Now, the threat that I have been saying all along, and I think I've been proven right now, is that the Iranian regime would read the room wrong, in the sense that they thought they were still dealing with Barack Obama and Joe Biden. They didn't understand that the deal that Donald Trump would accept would be a real full dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program, fully verified. President Trump even used language about blowing up the nuclear facilities. So we're talking about the Libya model, right? So that was the deal that Trump was willing to accept. And he's still giving the Iranians possibly, although as you and I are speaking, things have changed. I understand the Iranians are now coming back and asking the Omanis to bring the U.S. back to the table. And the latest report I saw was that the president is pushing back against that offer to come back to the table.
Well, they're playing him because, basically speaking, in past negotiations, they stall. Time is on their side, they believe. So what you do is you negotiate, but you don't negotiate seriously, and you play games and you stall it out. And I think Donald Trump is a deal maker. And after 60 days, he saw that they were trying to bluff him.
Exactly right. And that's when the attack broke out, exactly on day 61. And so, Zev, that is my point, which is that there was a potential deal, but that deal was really changing the very fabric of who the Iranian regime is. That was the only deal that would have been possible to get inked between a Trump administration and the Iranian regime. I was not optimistic, but my point is that Donald Trump gave the Iranian regime the opportunity to essentially save themselves. They blew it. They didn't read the room right.
Now, you think they're going to try to save themselves now? Is that possible? They're going to try to make a deal? Because again, they're being embarrassed. Is there a face-saving way for them to stop what's going on?
I don't think there is a face-saving way. Look, you know what? The regime, it's raison d'etre. The entire reason that it exists is that it's to reject American values. It's to reject the West. It's a revolutionary regime at its core. And I don't see them changing their stripes. I really, Zev, I'm standing by what I said earlier. I think the days of this regime are over, because right now they have been so exposed, so embarrassed, so weakened, that here's the two options right now that's being placed to them. Either there's going to be continued military assault on them, or they're going to have to come kind of begging for a deal that the Trump administration of the United States is willing to accept. And that deal does not allow the regime to operate in the way that they have been operating this last 46 years. So basically, the Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic of Iran, as we know it, I believe is over.
I hope so, because basically speaking, Malcolm, what you said before is that they don't have the bunker busting bombs. So basically speaking, they can destroy the electricity and do damage to the nuclear facilities, but the actual ones underground still are going to remain intact even after this operation is over.
Well, you can do a lot of damage with the bombs that they do have, and maybe they'll be provided with additional ones. They do have larger than the 2,000-pound bombs. But you also have ground operations in places that can make sure that the facilities, but when you cut off all of, and you have to be careful with radiation, and nothing is hot, so I don't think that we face an immediate issue, but the IEA has raised this prospect, and we should remind people that Iran was found in violation by in a measure led by Britain, France, Germany.
First time in 20 years, right?
The Energy Agency finally condemned them, but they did not refer them to the UN. They did not to the Security Council, which they're supposed to do. They did not impose any sanctions on it. It's a sort of meaningless, but as a statement to the Iranians, it was important. Unfortunately, no governments have come out essentially in support of Israel. Some haven't criticized them roundly, but most of them have issued pretty negative comments. We're not seeing any countries that I know who have rallied to Israel's support. I think that there are elements that are rising, and I share what was said before, that in the Arab countries, they're cheering for Israel to do it. They'll condemn Israel, but they're cheering for them to finish the job, do it right, get it over with, because to them, Iran is as big a danger, maybe even bigger than to Israel, and it certainly is to the West. And if we had time to go into what Iran was engaged in all over, and let alone the persecution of its own people, they're the leading executioners in the world. Look at the degradation of women and all the things that they're doing. The people of Iran, 90% want regime change. 80% would want relations with Israel. Really opportunities, and the West didn't take advantage of it, as I think Ellie was referring to before. We had opportunities. This could have been done, but we're getting close to the hot point where it would have been too late. And that's what the Ayatollah was aiming for.
The Ayatollah was aiming for. Basically, Hamas was going to be the first in the attack against Israel. Hezbollah was going to join in, and then Iran was going to attack Israel. Wasn't that part of the strategy? And Syria. Right.
To have them all like the Houthis are doing, but they're degraded, but they're doing it. And they would have been a seven front war against Israel. And had there been an attack on Iran, they were building Hezbollah as an insurance policy against an attack by Israel like this, because they said, we will, launch the 150,000 missiles that they have there. Plus, they were trying to smuggle weapons into Yudo Sharon, into the West Bank, plus what Hamas would have had. But even without Hamas, having Hezbollah, the domestic uprising, and trying to smuggle weapons all the time through Jordan into the territories, this was a plot that has been being hatched over many, many years. So people don't, I'm saying, don't be armchair generals. Don't try to second guess. The Israelis have studied this. What they've done, as we all, I think, agree, has been super remarkable. But the price that they're paying now is very high.
Very high. Finally, before this whole thing happened, I read reports, it didn't get a lot of attention, that Iran claimed that they were able to penetrate Israel's nuclear facility. They stole tons of documents. There were two Iranian spies, that were Israeli Jews, that penetrated them. Let's look at that. How true is that? What did they have? Were they able to penetrate Israel's nuclear facility? And did this also make Israel decide that they want to attack Iran now?
Anybody want to be released? They didn't release it. They said they had some papers. The people at the IAEA said it's only about the Sorek, which is a site investigated, which is open to the IAEA for inspection. So we don't know whether there's anything there beyond it. I don't know if the others know more than that. But from what I know and follow with people very closely associated with it, you see the Israelis didn't panic when the announcement was made.
Yeah, I monitor Israeli media pretty carefully, and no one is talking about it. Nachal Sorek is a very, very small educational facility, and it is open to to inspectors, and there's nothing going on there that people don't know about already. Obviously, the big one is in Dimona, and there's been no talk at all of anything going on there. So no, I wouldn't put much credence into any of this.
Yeah, I want to echo this sentiment. Zev, my guess is that this is the Iranians trying to pretend that they have pulled off something similar to Israel's coup when they got the Iranian nuclear files, when they went into Iran and whisked away those files and took them out of the country. So I think the Iranians are trying to make it seem like they have this kind of capability, that the intelligence capabilities that Israel does, but they certainly do not.
Anyway, thank all of you. Malcolm Hoenlein, the Commerce of President, major American Jewish organization. Thank you for joining us. Uri Kaufman, Iranian expert. The book is called Author of American Intifada, Israel, the Gaza War, and New Anti-Semitism. What's your next book going to be about?
I think I'm going to do one about the Gaza War. I've been researching it as it's been going along. I wrote a book about the Yom Kippur War. It took over 20 years to research it because all the information came out. So this will be a little bit different, but could be a nice first draft. Certainly be an interesting story to tell.
Ellie Cohanim, a former American diplomat, broadcast journalist, served in the Trump administration, refugee from Iran. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Zev.
Thank you. And look forward to have everybody back. With God's help, we will persevere. We do need, like I said, I look at like the 6-day war and the attack on the Iraqi nuclear reactor.